This is Distraction Therapy, a podcast to explain how we get through the day. Keep calm and carry on.
Hello, it's Saturday the 2nd of May, and this is a Distraction Therapy podcast with me, Rob Watson, and today I'm talking over the internet with John Halker. If I pronounced your name right, John. I always check with everybody because I always get it wrong.
You have indeed, Rob.
Brilliant. John's a psychotherapist, and he's the co-founder of the Better app. How are you doing at the moment?
I'm okay. I think I'm okay. In fact, about half an hour ago, I got my results back from my COVID-19 test from the National Health Service. I went on one of those drive-through things, which was quite fun. Not quite as fun as a drive-in movie, but it was similar. And it says, "Dear John, your recent COVID-19 test has been processed and has come back negative." So I don't know if that's good news or bad news.
It's good news.
I emailed two friends who were concerned about me, and one said, "Oh, that's fantastic news," and the other one said, "That's such a shame. It would have been nice to have had it and got better." And then you know that you're.
Do you know I've got
some kind of
having had it and had it twice, or a relapse of it. You don't want it again. I mean, it's been relatively mild, but it is like it lingers, and it does. One of the things, whether I'm not a doctor and don't follow my advice, but I read a good article by a New York surgeon who said that one of the things that they use to check people and keep an eye on people is your pulse oxygen levels. There's a little meter you can buy. So I bought one from Amazon, cost me about 60 quid. And my pulse, the blood oxygen levels had been down to about 80% for about a week. But today it's back up. So it's just, if there was any further drop, I'd have called, the NHS, called my GP or something like that. But it was consistent. But if you get it, you don't want it. It's.
Are you feeling better now?
Yeah. I've got a lingering cough, which is the subject. I have to edit them out because it gets really annoying. So I'll cough occasionally, but if there's other coughs in the background, I have to edit them out. But other than that, it's kind of like you just get tired. If I couldn't go out for a 5 kilometre run anytime soon. So, but other than that, light duties around the house. Sitting at my desk is fine. The bigger problem is putting on weight because of being sedentary.
Yeah. For me, I tell you the interesting thing about the test results, having sort of done through that whole drive-through thing, I don't know whether I have had it because I promise you I have been unwell. I did have a dry cough, bit of a temperature for a few days, felt like I'd been hit by a truck and just, really didn't want to get out of bed and had that classic virusy feeling a whole lot more than man flu. So I don't know whether they're testing for antigens or antibodies. So I don't know if they tell me I haven't got it now, or I don't know if they're telling me I've never had it.
Or that particular sample could be, there's not 100% accuracy rate with it either, is there? So it could be that, it's just on that particular time when that particular sample was taken, it's not been significant enough to measure it. So with the kind of weight of all of that in mind, excuse me, with the weight of all of that in mind, how are you getting the aim of this podcast really is just to talk about an opportunity to sit back and figure out what are we doing, how are we getting through the day, what's the kind of our coping strategies and our distraction strategies really. So kind of are you staying in your routine?
Yeah, I am. I think that's really important. I think most human beings need a set of rails to run on, and it's nice to go off the rails, but I think you need to get back on them to some degree. I've actually been working really hard, oddly. I mean, I've had a lot of, I've still got a busy psychotherapy clinic, albeit that it's all done online now, but I've actually been doing that for quite some time, and I train other psychotherapists how to do online therapy and some do's and don'ts and the safety and insurance, the legalities, or the liabilities. We're all worried about liabilities, aren't we? All of those kind of things. So that has kept me going, and at the same time, I've launched a YouTube channel called Well Yeah, YAH, which you should be able to find. Luckily, it hasn't. The logo is some little concentric circles, but it should be. There's not too many pictures of me on it, but once you get the videos, then I'm afraid it's me talking about stuff to do with mental and emotional health. And I actually do is I've got an acquaintance who helps me make these movies, a friend, and she picks up all the emails. People email questions, and I don't. The trick is that I don't know in advance what the question is. So yeah, I might get asked about trauma, or I might get asked about sleep or depression, or one the other day about suicide, and she, I point the camera at me, and then she can see me over Skype, and then she texts the question to me right at the moment. So the pressure's on, no advance notice. So it just puts a little twist in it, keeps me on my toes. So that I'm putting up about 2 videos a week at the moment, and it's just beginning to get some traction. You know what these things are like, Rob. At the beginning, nothing ever happens. I've probably got close up to 100 subscribers in a couple of weeks. The other thing that I've been doing, which is the end of a year's work, is I have been developing an app. I developed an app, 2 years ago now, and it launched a year ago, and it's called Better Stop Suicide. It goes out in all the app stores. It's absolutely free. It's had about 50,000 downloads now, and I've got lots and lots of emails from people on different sides of the world saying how it's saved their life, and it's really gratifying. There's another app now just called Better App, which has got lots of free stuff in. It's also got a premium version, and it looks just beautiful. I didn't design the look, so I'm not being immodest. A colleague of mine, Peter Grange, runs an agency, a design agency, advertising agency, marketing agency in the Channel Islands and London, and his guys have done the kind of technical end of it and made it look just fantastic. But that's only been launched less than a week now, so just up to a couple of hundred downloads on that one. And so all of those things have been keeping me hugely busy. And I'm sitting here today thinking about it all and thinking about how to use, I'm afraid I always call it anti-social media, just to promote it and shamelessly push the commercial side of it, because I need to eat. Yeah.
So what do you do to take time out?
Every day I go for about an hour's walk, and I've done more walking than I have for years. And I really, I schedule it in. You've got to schedule in your breaks, haven't you? Because it's easy when there's this relatively unstructured, undisciplined life compared to what it was. It's easy just to fall off of that routine. So it's in my calendar, and it pops up and says walk now, and I do. Put the walking shoes on, and just I've been trapped away from home. My home is Guernsey in the Channel Islands, and so I have been. I don't know how much people know about Guernsey. We are part of the Channel Islands, not part of the UK, not part of Great Britain, but it is a British dependent territory. Never been part of the EU. We don't have VAT. We've got Marks and Spencers, but that's about it. It's our nod, and we've got our own currency, got our own pretty much everything. We cede our foreign affairs and defence to the UK, but it's got its own borders and its own police and its own border force. So I had flown over to the UK for a few days' work, and I was here just thinking about going back, and the Chief Minister of Guernsey unfortunately made what I think was his only mistake in the whole thing. He gave everyone I think it was about 30 hours notice. He said, if you come back now, you do not have to go into isolation. But if you come back after 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday evening, you are going to have to go into 14 days isolation. And so everybody was running for the airport, and I did not want to get on a plane with a pile of students who were running home to mum, businessmen in pinstripe suits who were maybe also running home to mum, I don't know. And so I stayed, and after that, it became a bit more restrictive. So I kind of stuck in the UK. But, I was born and brought up in the UK. I'm very, very happy being stuck. And since this business started, I don't call it lockdown. I call it splendid isolation. Lockdown, for me, it conjures a picture of sort of 100 men in orange jumpsuits suddenly having to lie on the floor while sirens going off. We're very lucky people on the whole, so I'm enjoying life at the moment. I keep happy. I am not connected to people. I'm dying to give various friends a hug, but yeah, I'm okay. We're all okay. It'll all be pretty much fine. I'm a great optimist in life. I feel so dreadfully sorry. I don't know how many people have died from this COVID-19 virus. It's just ridiculous if you look at statistics. I went onto a mainstream media website the other day, and they were saying you can't compare one country with another because we all count our dead in different ways. And one of the BBC websites said, there are different criteria for. I wish I'd kept a screenshot of it. They've probably changed it now, but they said different criteria for deciding whether somebody's dead or not.
Yes.
You couldn't make it up, could you?
Well, I suppose the mirror test has always served people well in the past.
Yeah. And it was the same BBC website that was advising us, in order to keep our sanity, not to look at the news.
Yeah.
My desire to remain informed is constantly at odds with my desire to remain sane. So, I stay away from all that stuff. I stay away from most social media. I've managed only to donate a couple of hours of my life to TikTok up to now.
Yeah, I've not ventured as far as TikTok yet, and I've kind of am a news obsessive, or I have been. One of the things I've done differently is I've not watched television news since kind of the Brexit discussions and everything. I got disillusioned with a lot of the kind of coverage then, so I've not picked back into television news nor radio news. So most of my information is coming from flicking through various newspapers and Twitter, things like that. And the that addictiveness of the phone, the comfort in your hand. I've reached the peak of that, and I know that I have to now start to lock it away, I think, and kind of just regulate how much access I have to it, and don't take it up to. For a long time, I never took it up to the bedroom, and then I got back into the habit of having it there. I sleep perfectly well. I'm getting 7 hours good sleep a night, so that's not a problem. I'm so regularly, falling asleep at midnight and getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that's fine for me. But it's the the constant distraction, the unwanted distraction, and the worrying about what's next. Is that going to prove my fears right? And it's kind of like there's nothing you can do about it. You're left in this situation where, my contribution is is to stay at home. I can work perfectly well at home. We've been told to stay at home. I'm doing my bit by staying at home. I kind of can't do anything more than that, really. I've maybe tried kind of keep in contact with a few people, but there was a sudden kind of wave at the beginning of this of organisations, stepping in and saying, we're reconfiguring all of our services, and we're giving everybody advice about how to change their services, and that's been done now. And hopefully a lot of the public services are in place and people are being reached, and food deliveries and medication deliveries are going to the right people. And it's kind of like, okay, and then everybody's suddenly now thinking, well, what do we do next? But I don't want to be one of those people. I asked this question of my friend Jay Sykes last night, and have you watched any of the marvelous things that are available online that are free? The National Theatre, the National Portrait Gallery, all of these things have got all these amazing resources online. Have you looked at any of them?
Yeah, I have. I've looked at the National Theatre. What was it? Was it The Man with Two Governors? Everyone kept telling me what a fantastic thing it was, and I must watch it. I logged on to YouTube to watch it on the National Theatre's live transmission, and so did 160,000 other people, and it just bombed out. I couldn't watch it, unfortunately. So it's one of those things. I will save it for another day. But my route. I mean, my routine. I just wish I had time for it all. I really don't. It's difficult. I finish work at about 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. By the time I've eaten, I generally allow myself, a time to watch a movie. Lots of things on Netflix or Amazon Prime or Now TV that I've been meaning to watch for ages that are on my watch list. I got into Westworld. Have you watched Westworld?
I've seen it. I've got the first season on Blu-ray because I don't subscribe to Sky. And I got a few episodes in and thought, this is really good, but I've not gone back to it. And it's one of those ones, probably at some point I will sit and watch it all.
It's fascinating, actually, because at the beginning you get the impression it's just this thing about what we would think of as an extreme theme park. But actually, by the middle of episode, whatever, I don't know, maybe it's season 2, before you get to the point where everyone's beginning to understand the complexities and think about the philosophy of our relationship with artificial intelligence and the morality around it, and whose law is it that says robots can't harm us?
Asimov.
Thank you. And that whole bit, and I found that prompted a lot of philosophical thought for me. Yeah. Going back to your question, I get out, I get exercise, and I walk briskly for an hour. The only thing that bothers me are fantastic. Can I have a rant?
Of course you can.
If another bloody jogger runs past me, 6 inches away, spitting sweat all over me as they huff and puff, I'm going to emit some expletives.
This is what Twitter's for. That's where you're supposed to get this out of your system on Twitter. Yeah, it's plenty of that there.
I'm a Twitter user, but I go with Ricky Gervais. He said it's just like a giant toilet wall, isn't it? It's a constantly changing toilet. Well. And I go look at it and I think, oh yeah, it's a great place for people to express their righteous indignation. I look at my way of looking at social media is this. There are 2 important elements to it. One, if the product is free, you are the product, or your attention is the product. But the second one is that, Christ, I wish I could remember what the second one was. It's Saturday afternoon.
So it's that attention economy thing, isn't it? It's the kind of it addles your brain. Ultimately.
I know what it is. My philosophy about social media has always been the only thing you use it for is to congratulate other people for an achievement. If that's your starting point, I think that's kind of a noble way to use social media, if that's not too old-fashioned a concept. I think, for me, this business where everybody has a moan, everybody tries to get an attention. They have a conversation with a friend that lives down the street in public. Why would you do that? It's this business where they put happy birthday on that person's timeline. Is that a good thing? For me, it's not. I prefer to call the person up or send them a personal message, not shout across a crowded room, happy birthday.
I'm the kind of person who doesn't even acknowledge that people have birthdays in anyway. So, the fact that people do it on Facebook and Twitter means nothing, even more nothing than nothing,
Yeah, absolutely. What about you? I mean, you've been going out, you've been, you've got enough energy now.
Yeah, largely stuck in for a few weeks. But, this morning I cut the hedge. I've got some windows to wash, so I'm sitting here looking out over the street, and it's the windows are filthy, and I've been sitting there saying that for weeks, and it's like, but I just haven't felt kind of up to doing it. I thought little and often.
Yeah,
and it's it's a couple of things on Netflix. I liked Star Trek Discovery. I watched last year, but Picard on Amazon Prime was okay. It wasn't amazing or something like that. I'm halfway through Devs on if you like your science fiction on the BBC iPlayer, and it's a bit kind of it's a bit po-faced, and it's got some good themes in there, got some good ideas in there, but it's like really drawing it out as if it's more important. It's a science fiction yarn, and you can tell Asimov told these a bit of a lick. And this is like dragging it out a bit and making it more portentous than it maybe needs to be, especially when you've read a lot of Philip K. Dick or J.G. Ballard or something like that. And unfortunately, no, I'm not doing any reading or much reading because I find it's like a nervous, anxious thing of. You can't get into turning to the point where you turn the page because you're reaching for your phone or you want to get up and do something. You've got that and it maybe needs to go out for a long walk and burn off some energy and then come back and kind of just sit in a room with no other devices. And
for me the reading comes at night. I don't take the electronics to bed. It's a great temptation to sit and watch rubbish on the iPad. I never have TV or screens in my room. I've got a document called Top Tips for Good Sleep that I send out to clients who are having sleep issues, and one of them is save your bedroom for sleeping and making wild passionate love. Don't take screens into your room. But when I climb into bed at night, I just take a book and I go to bed about an hour before I want to go to sleep, and I know that I'm going to sit and really read. Been reading some fascinating stuff, actually. I've always got a bit of fiction on the go, and I've always got a factual book on the go. I've been reading Douglas Murray's The Madness of Crowds. Have you come across him?
I've not, no. What's it? Tell us a bit about that. Is this the opposite to the wisdom of crowds?
Yeah, it's about the madness of crowds. It's about the whole woke thing and all sorts of stuff in there. I couldn't do it justice, but if you want a read about some of the madness of political correctness, and he's not a Guardian reader, but there's a lot of his stuff which is really quite difficult to argue with, and he deals with some things which a lot of people don't want to talk about. And I always admire people who are prepared to do that. Well, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say that the kind of fear of the crowd and has been a consistent theme of, right the way through, I suppose, to the French Revolution and, the kind of that period of, kind of the mob taking over, because there is a form of behaviour in the crowd which stops people being individuals, and you become sane, rational individuals caught up in a mob mentality in a crowd. And we're seeing that Trump is playing with fire when he's inciting people in Michigan to free the state and things like that, and they're armed. This thing, collective expression takes over, and our individuality gets pushed out the way, and we make ridiculous decisions, which we wouldn't normally do in other times.
Well, you've only got to look at you've got to look at history, and you're familiar with the Milgram experiment.
Is that the one where they were supposedly punishing people and inflicting pain on people, and it was to see how far people would go with it, and the compliance of the students? Was it students who were taking part in it?
That's right. It was done in California quite a few years ago. But Darren Brown, who I'm a big fan of, I think, he did a kind of extension of that, where he got a huge studio audience into a giant theatre, and they were watching something live, and little bit by little bit, this bunch of reasonable people, whatever it was, a few hundred people, it got to the point where they killed a bloke. Well, they didn't actually kill him, but Darren Brown cleverly made it look like they did. I'll try and find a link to it, but it's really a fascinating commentary on the madness of crowds. And Douglas Murray looks at various things which I guess some people would think of as controversial. Lots of stuff to do with transgender issues, lots of stuff to do with humour and political correctness in the workplace, all that kind of thing, that says actually, 90% of people under their breath are going, God, this is just tosh. Please just, the life and get on with it. But nobody wants to, because there's an email from HR saying this is the new policy of how you will think. And so he challenges a number of things in I think a fair and honest and interesting way. I'm always, I guess, a fan of people who are prepared to swim against the tide, really.
Well, I mean, in that vein, I think the potential danger of this kind of thinking, we might be seeing played out with real consequences with the nudge theory stuff and the kind of behaviorism models that have, we can rely on social psychology to direct outcomes, to make something happen, whereas that's not how social psychology works. Social psychology allows you to understand the process that drove a certain set of issues and outcomes, but it shouldn't be used, in order to be able to, you're watching the tail lights of the vehicle as it goes on its journey, but you're not driving the vehicle, whereas kind of the people we've maybe got in power at the moment believe that you can use nudge theory and behaviorism to drive the vehicle, and I find that very, very susceptible in its tenor. Is there a way that we can, on a day-to-day basis, we kind of, I like the phrase that I think it's Robert Kagan calls it, that we're not individuals, we're embedduals. And that we're embedded in communities, and that we're herd animals in many ways, but we're still kind of individuals at the same time. But to think that we uniquely behave, we are defined by our patterns of behaviour, rather than necessarily by our individual characteristics, and that conflicts with a consumer-driven ethos of the economy, doesn't it?
To some ways, yes. I love that embeddualism, and I've never heard that one before. I think about it in terms of, basic psychological needs. If you think of a human being as a newborn computer, fantastic operating system installed, but no data files. But you have templates, and one of the many templates is saying to you, you're helpless. You're this newborn little screaming thing, and you can't take care of yourself. And so what you need to do is be part of a tribe. And then a moment later, this big person hoves into view who feeds you, makes you feel safe and secure, and soothes you when you cry, and you've joined a tribe. And if you're not part of a tribe, then you could be eaten by another tribe. And so, yeah, we all need that sense of belonging. And some people get that in different ways, of course, don't they? Some people do it, some people of a worldwide movement of trade unionists. Some people are part of the same religion. Some people are part of the same family, part of the same football team fan club. A tribe is, a classic tribe, of course, is a family, and you're part of that family until puberty, and then something unseen in your brain tells you need to go and start thinking about making your own tribe at that point.
Is that Is that maybe a counter argument to? Sorry, I forgot. I didn't write it down. What's the guy who wrote the book that you're referring to?
Douglas Murray.
Is that not a counter argument to his argument that actually what being woke is a drive towards being part of a tribe, a set of political ideas, ethos, values, that kind of thing, in the same way that the boomer generation in the post-Second World War were driven by certain things to belong, have certain forms of identity. This is just another generation's attempt to have something which belongs to them and they can be defined by.
I think I could go along with that to some extent, but the speed of change and what's different now is the speed and availability and the proliferation of communication and ideas. I think it's an odd view that I've just been, I suppose a little tiny germinating view of mine. Something had to come along after religion, didn't it? The death of religion has left a vacuum. Religion is simply a way of controlling people, of controlling the masses. No matter what your belief system is, it's a great way to control the masses because you use the best weapon that there is, which is fear. I'm a what did Christopher Hitchens put it, a celestial dictator, and I am observing you from the moment you are born, even before that, from the moment you're conceived, not just till you die, but after that as well. And you are, every single behavioural trait and even every single thought that you have, if it's fantastically there, well, great. You can go to heaven. It's all going to be roses and flowers, but if you don't, if you get your thought processes wrong, if you get your behaviour wrong, then you're going off to eternal hell and damnation. I mean, this kind of celestial dictatorship was a fascinating tool used by most religions, as far as I can see. Not all of them, one or two notable exceptions, But yeah, I guess what you would think of as the mainstream religions these days. But of course, a lot of the mainstream religions are dying off, aren't they? I mean, church attendance figures these days in the UK is just down to a very, very small number of people. And so what do we need? A lot of people look around elsewhere for that sense of belonging. I was interviewed on BBC a while ago, and the interviewer, I forget how she asked the question now, but she was asking me about why young men are getting sucked into Islamic extremism in the UK. Where's it all going wrong? And I said, well, imagine a young man living in a down-hill council estate, and he's just got nothing in life. He can't think of any way of escaping from all this. It all seems to be mapped out for him, and he's had excitement and adventure and risk sanitized out of his life by health and safety policies and that learned helplessness that goes with that, and so he's lost resilience. He's a conformist, but inside he doesn't really want to. And along comes a really charismatic leader that says, come and join us and come and be part of what we've got. And he's selling him adventure and all sorts of wonderful excitement. And That's how I joined the Sea Scouts in the middle of London when I was a kid.
Promise of adventure.
And that saved me, being a little scout in my uniform there, that saved me from, jobbery on the council estate that I grew up in. And unfortunately, a lot of those things have disappeared now, haven't they? Or they've died. Something needs to come along to replace them. So when somebody on social media can disseminate their message of madness to 1 million people, the click of a mouse or the tap of an iPhone screen, it's hardly surprising that there's all sorts of madness out there, really.
You're bringing to mind something which kind of I kind of read a little bit about Carl Jung, and he talks about the one of his pivotal dreams. Told him about the death that we have to kill the hero. We have to kill is it Siegfried? Who's the archetypal hero in the Ring cycle? It is it's and we have to that mythical figure of the hero. And what he was describing about that was that the for a long time we've had this archetypal view of the role, certainly attached with masculinity, and it was the heroic model. And the simplest way of thinking about it, the hero's journey, that stuff that, the Douglas Campbell stuff, and thinking about, the journey of the hero. And we it's all in our popular culture these days, Lord of the Rings, the Avengers, all the Marvel movies, the hero. And we're celebrating heroes at the moment. And it shows you how widely that motif is used. But actually, that's not what secures the success of that individual, that person, because along the way there are the helpers. There's the innkeeper who secures the bedding in the inn for the hero to have a comfortable night's sleep. Who's the blacksmith that makes the shoes for the horse. None of that is mentioned in the hero's journey, and yet all of that is integral to it. And at the moment we've had this moment, this outburst of celebrating, calling people heroes. And no, they're not heroes. They're doing their job in a system of jobs that are distributed in a process. But there's nothing heroic about it. I mean, there's lots to be appreciated and valued and thankful for, but there's nothing particularly heroic about somebody doing their job. And most people who are doing that job would probably say, yeah, we're not heroes. We're just doing our job. And yet we default to this hook that we place things on. So no wonder people struggle, because who can be a hero? You're sitting at home, or you latch onto false heroes and false gods who lead you to your destruction. And those kind of prophets of doom that you wonder how people can easily get, because we've not grown up past that myth, that hero myth.
Is that a bad thing?
Well, I think we have to, because there's another side, which is the masculine hero and the feminine provider and nurturer. That the two have to be balanced and reconciled. And if you live in a society which is lopsided towards one side of that, then you don't achieve equilibrium. And so at the moment, actually, our caring professions, what we've done is, can we have a rant? You might have to stop me. What we've done, I read a really interesting quote, or it might have been in a podcast that I listened to, where somebody said, up until the 1970s, 1980s, the caring professions, doctors, teachers, police, probation teams, was never exposed to the marketplace. It was just, in fact, you weren't allowed to market your services. You could set up a practice, but you couldn't advertise it. You were referred to people without that kind of commercial activity. In the 1980s, what comes in is the heroic commercial entrepreneur, the grifter, comes in as the heroic model. We'll sort everything out. And we've gone through this cycle where we've listened to these people, but we've been left wanting. The systems that the grifters have put in place have been not adequate when we need them, and we haven't got the protections and the capacity to, the prison service is a really good example in terms of probation work in the UK of having to be, it was privatised, it was a disaster, and it's having to be renationalised and put back into the public domain because the values and the virtues, not everything extends to the market, but the market has been held up as this kind of heroic space of freedom. Whereas actually what we need is care homes in the UK put out to the market, and it's now being seen as you can't control them, you can't do anything because it's fragmented, and you're reliant on people who are at the bottom of the pile in terms of pay and security, and we're warehousing older people in places which are just death traps now. Sorry, I told you it was a rant. I didn't intend to. I think I go off on one, but is that got roots?
I think it's a difficult one. I think it's actually what makes it difficult for me is I can see areas where actually the privatisation of various things has been good, and I can see various areas where it's just been appalling. My profession is that I am a psychotherapist, and I'm a private practitioner, but I have worked in state systems and I've worked in the private world, and I've worked in South Africa, I've worked in the United States, I've worked in the UK and still do part of the time, and work in Guernsey. In Guernsey, we don't have a National Health Service. We have a system which is, you go and see a GP and it costs you, I think it's 48 quid, 50 quid, something like that. Large portion of the population is insured for that visit, but some people aren't, and there are some people who just cannot afford to go to the doctor. In the UK, of course, the National Health Service has been riddled for decades, a power struggle between the clinicians on the front line and the managers, and we get to these ridiculous situations where there's 8 managers per patient kind of thing. I forget what the exact statistics are. So it's a really difficult one. I personally don't think healthcare should be for sale, but I do know. I started a charity a few years back, and that really allows me to see quite a few people for nothing or very little. I can tell you this, the moment somebody walks into my door and is paying nothing, they are not the least bit invested in getting better. I know that a terrible generalisation, but it's absolutely true. If I charge them even a minimal amount, even a £5, and my private fees would make your eyes water, but if I charge them a minimal fee of a £5 for coming to see me, I can tell you from that moment on they are deeply invested. I do a lot of work for companies and organisations, and I exhort the employer, fantastic, yes, send them to me, great, but make them pay something. Just some small contribution so that they're invested in it. So that's obviously only in the world of mental health. Look at the railways. I mean, there are all sorts of arguments for and against the nationalisation. I've watched the nationalisation of the rail industry when I was a kid. Who was it? Beeching, then the infamous Dr. Beeching had a major impact on the whole thing. I think there are lots of arenas where it's good. Let me put my hand up and confess. I'm a capitalist. I think on the whole, capitalism works, but capitalism works until the point where it just becomes greed, and that if we can bring it back round to we first instead of me first, and have, I don't know, maybe caring capitalism or something, then I think that will stand us in good stead. I am probably against globalization for that reason, a dominance of a few big players. It was a great film. You're familiar with the film Rollerball?
Oh, a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, what happened? There were no more countries anymore, and the world was run by the corporations. And there was the Energy Corporation and the Transport Corporation and the Rollerball team. And our hero was part of a rollerball team that worked for the sinister Energy Corporation that controlled us all. That was a fascinating. I think there was a more recent version of that. It had great music in it as well, that film. It was one of those that, the soundtrack to my childhood was the soundtrack to Rollerball.
I mean, it's a common theme, isn't it, of dystopian science fiction, and it's arguable. An aside, it's kind of, I was FaceTiming a friend. It was through WhatsApp, whatever you call the video call on WhatsApp. And we were chatting on that, and he's like, this is, even in 2001, Blade Runner, they had video calls, but they were in booths. Nobody imagined the handheld, device. But, it's arguable that we have these super large global corporations like Apple and Google, and, it's kind of controlled internationally, which are as powerful as governments. And control. Who would you trust? One of the things that's going to be brought in is the contact tracing. So Germany had a debate about how to introduce that, and they decided not to go. As far as I remember, the last article I've seen, these things change every few hours. But the last article I saw about it was saying that they decided not to go with a state-run contact tracing app, whereas that's what they're talking about in the UK, to have a government run and to actually let it into the marketplace. So Google and Apple and other Microsoft would provide the apps, because despite them being these corporate giants who are out for their own profit-making interest, they're also more trustworthy than our governments. Well, I was wow, that's. I
think that's a really. I think to me, you've raised one of the most important points in contemporary debate, is that one of trust, and trust has gone out of. I don't trust anybody in the mainstream media anymore. I've sat in a radio studio talking to journalists and raised a point, and they've played a jingle and said, "Sorry, you can't talk about that. It goes against government advice." Sorry. And when they put the faders up, I started to argue with them again. I said, "So you've just told me while the faders were down that I can't talk about this and I can't say that. I said, you are the BBC. That's the most extraordinary thing that's ever happened to me." I have been invited back again recently, and I'm quite proud of that. It's just that trust has gone out of all sorts of things. However, would you like to be Prime Minister of the UK at the moment, even without this virus? What would you do? Because I've got to tell you something.
List. I've got a long list, and you'd have to put up with it.
But I have to tell you, half the country wouldn't trust you, even though you had great intent. They wouldn't trust you because you disagree with their ideals. You disagree with their modus operandi. That's the issue here. And I think what we need to do, and what will help to overcome that, is to go back to civilised discourse, civilised debate, being allowed to disagree with each other. It was something I wish I could remember what it was. I watched on YouTube the other day. It was just a lovely debate between people who held really opposing views on something. And of course, what there was a lot of was that reflective listening thing. So what you're trying to tell me is so and so and so and so. Rather than sitting there waiting to jump in and pounce and aggressively put their dogmatic view, what both of them were doing was listening to what the other person was saying and trying to understand that and put themselves in that position. It's one of the things I think we should be doing in prisons, interestingly, just going off at a tangent. An awful lot of people end up in prison because they don't know how to do conflict. They don't know how to argue. They get so emotionally aroused when they're debating something. If somebody disagrees with them, that it ends in violence. And I'd love to start a program. I'd love to go into prisons and teach people how to argue and debate and discuss and listen and all those conflict resolution skills. A colleague of mine started a thing a while ago called the Guild of Conciliators, I think it's called, or the Guild of Mediators, or something like that, to try and bring that kind of sensible debate to different things. So I think for us to get trust back into our world would be a useful thing. Corporate greed has destroyed a lot of that trust. Just going travelling these days is your level of vigilance has to go up, which is mentally unhealthy for you. It has to go up. Why does it have to go up? Because you know that the airlines are going to try and rip you off in the small print. You know that your suitcase is going to be a millimetre bigger than the previous airline you went on, and you can carry it for free on airline A but not airline B. That when you get to the car rental desk, that promised 20 quid a day for your car is quickly going to turn into 50 quid a day unless you've really got your wits about you. That you need to go around with your own phone camera and photograph and film every corner of the car, because otherwise when you get back, the slightest little scratch on it, they will deny that it was ever there. When you get to your hotel and you find that it was one thing was promised, but in the small print you've actually been given something else. And there's that kind of thing all of the time, and these guys are all competing with each other. I mean, I've got this gig going on at the moment. I was meant to go to Denmark for what was I going to do? I was going to Copenhagen for a documentary film festival. That's what it was, and a conference that coincided that I was going to speak at, and I couldn't go because the government of Denmark said, sorry, we're closing the borders because of this COVID-19 virus. It was at the very beginning of the whole thing. So, okay, great, I won't go. Called up the hotel. Fine, we'll give you a full refund for that. And a month later, I get an email from the online booking system saying, no, you can't have a refund, but you can have a credit voucher. I don't want a credit voucher. I want a refund, and I was promised there are so many things like that where I know I've been and spoken to people who run those kind of organisations. What they're relying on is 9 out of 10 people will just go, I can't be bothered, I haven't got time to argue. And every now and again, the 1 out of 10 like me comes along and says, no, you told me you'd give me my money back. Give me my money back. So we're walking around in this sea of deceit, which is perpetrated by mostly large organisations whose prime focus is the wealth of their shareholders. But here's the problem. The wealth of their shareholders may be really, really important to your mum. Why? Because your mum's maybe getting a pension, and her pension fund requires that company A makes lots of profit because the pension fund is invested in that company. And there's a law that says the directors of a company must run that company to the maximum benefit of the shareholders. It doesn't talk about the ethics of doing that in the law. It says you must make the best returns for the shareholders.
And
so
I think this is where one of the kind of things has to change, isn't it? It's kind of that social return on investment, ethical practice model of where does the phrase of the age of this decade is you can have your cake and eat it, and obviously you can't. No conservative politician in the past would ever have admitted that phrase, and when they do, they get pilloried for it. quite rightly, because there's always a bill that's going to be paid. And you have to figure out, are you paying up front or are you going to pay afterwards? Are you going to pass it on to somebody else, or are you going to pass it on to, are you going to pay for it out of your own assets, wherever, but it's got to be paid somewhere. And we live in a world now where it's kind of there is no bill to be paid. We can do some magic tricks. We can move things around, and we can obfuscate, and we can rinse our customers, and we can rinse our clients. The pension thing, that's always, it's kind of like the argument with the royal family. I'm a Republican. In an election, I would vote. In a referendum, I would vote to abolish the monarchy. That's just my personal values. Don't ask anybody. I wouldn't campaign for it, but that's where I'd stand. Whereas, but people say, well, the royal family, they do a lot of real good. They bring a lot of money into the country. Well, so does Madame Tussauds. That's not the argument that you should base it on. The pensions argument is, for me, it's of the same type of argument, because where's the evidence of that? Where's the evidence that there is that? Because it's, people in ordinary life also want good quality public services. They want security and safety in their neighbourhoods. They want public transport that is affordable to use on a daily basis. They want an economy which functions well, and which you live in a positive social environment. That's what people want. The question is, how do we get there? And what we've been told and what we've lived with for the last 40 years is that the people who drive that value are the captains of finance. Remember that the Monty Python film, or is it the Meaning of Life? And they have this whole 20-minute short film with the pirates of the financial pirates, and that was so accurate, that they're the corporate people who've been given sway over the direction of our society, and that's where I come. That they're the heroes. So much focus has been placed on their capacity to drive value that we've forgotten that it's the park keeper, it's the shelf stacker, the postal worker, the delivery person, the receptionist in the doctor's. They're the things that actually matter, not the so-called heroes. And we see the heroes wanting, Branson and those kind of characters, Philip Green. They kind of suddenly in these situations become, all of a sudden they're not feeling quite so welcome. And I don't know whether that'll carry on or whether that's just my little bubble fantasy. I'm happy to be challenged on it.
Branson's never been a hero of mine. I can tell you a story, but not while these microphones are switched on.
Okay.
But interesting. Having lived in, I was born and brought up in London, as I told you, and very working class start in life, and probably, very, very proud of that in my way. But, a dad that fought in World War II, and a mum that lived through the Blitz and faced all the trials and tribulations of that. I've had to sit in the United States and explain to people the value of having a monarch who is somebody who is not there by popular vote. And more recently, I've been able to have the debate and say, look what goes wrong when the titular head of the country is put there by popular vote or otherwise. I can quite understand, and for a long time I've sympathised with the views. There are members of the royal family who perhaps do not offer value for money. I think it's a really difficult thing to put societal value on what the Queen does, and I think for me, the value that there obviously is something that is very, very difficult to explain and articulate until you actually sit in another country and listen to their view of the whole thing, and you just discuss and debate. So it happened in South Africa when I lived in South Africa just after Mandela had got out. As I moved over there, I was married to a South African girl who'd had to leave the country because because of her own politics and beliefs, and she'd left early on, I think it was late 80s, and was able to go back after Mandela was about to be elected. It was a fantastic time to be there. But Mandela was effectively royalty. He was a titular head of the country, but very little beyond that. I think Trump would be great if he would keep his nose out of politics, and we could just have him going around cutting ribbons and shaking hands and saying, "Oh, what do you do?" And we could all go on about what is orange skin and all the rest of it. I was really hoping we could get through this whole thing today, Rob, without mentioning Trump, and his name's come up 40 times now.
well, we're not talking about Brexit, so yeah.
This has all got terribly serious. I thought you were going to ask me about music
just,
and laughter yoga and
well, have you been doing that?
Okay. But can I just have one more rant? If another bank emails me and tells me we're all in this together, I'm going to go around there and have a word with somebody. Can you believe it?
Somebody did a mashup video, which I saw on Twitter or something like that, which is all the advertising in America, and they'd put all the firms, like 30 firms together with, we're all in it together, we're here to help you, these tough times, family, always been there. And it's just this series of cliches that these corporate organisations pull out to massage us and to kind of say, when you're sitting there watching TV because you've got no other imaginative ability to imagine that you could possibly do anything other than binge watch on rubbish on Netflix, which is what I kind of do, and I have done.
So you're like this one. As I sensed things easing up slightly in Guernsey and the number of virus cases going down quite sharply, I was talking to an acquaintance of mine. He's in the business of administering loans. And he told me that, he had been allowed to go back to work and open his office. And I thought, fantastic. And I emailed the States of Guernsey government and said, okay for me to come back now and open up my clinic. And they went, oh, God, no, you can't do that. I said, I just want to be sure of what you're telling me. It's much more important to open a loan administration business than it is to open a clinic that looks after the mental and emotional health of the population, is it? And we'll get back to you.
Well, the answer is yes. They should have just said yes and wait your turn. We'll get to you. But it's when you pose those kind of questions. I think Simon Jenkins wrote a piece in the Guardian about B&Q can open, but the museums can't. What's the difference? It's and when you start, it's funny. It's because you kind of touched on something which is kind of it's this idea: what is of social value? What is this process going to force us to think through? So what are those key things that we really do appreciate and value? And I mean value in that sense.
Yeah.
Appreciate, and there isn't enough appreciation. I love that phrase that you used earlier about the kind of nobility of gestures. The selflessness, that kind of stuff, and but don't portray it as some kind of a heroic act.
Yeah, I agree.
Nobility is sacrifice, not pushing yourself forward egotistically, isn't it? So it's,
it is. I'm very involved in some work which is to do with an organisation called PTSD Resolution. It's a charity that just helps traumatised traumatised service veterans and blue light service people, and they all want as little as possible to do with anything that calls them a hero. I signed up to be a soldier. I recognise I might have to kill people. That's what I do for a living. Sorry about that, but I ain't a hero. And people I know, who work here in the NHS go, for God's sake, stop all this business of clapping outside the hospital. You're just disturbing the patients, you know. I'm not a hero. I'm paid X amount of money, go and do a job, and that's what I'm doing. Sometimes it's a really difficult day, and sometimes it's not. It's what I signed up for, you know.
If you want to be a hero, pay your taxes.
Yeah, exactly that. No, I mean, you know, calm seas do not good captains make, do they? I mean,
no, it's true. So what are you?
I always look at it this way, you know. Harry Potter, talking of heroes, did not set out to look for resilience, but while he was fighting the forces of darkness and evil, resilience was something that he got.
Well, he found that in his friends. And what's interesting with Harry Potter and the play that J.K. Rowling did, he's troubled figure in his midlife. He doesn't resolve the tension of his earlier heroic persona, and he's a kind of more, you know, that's left for him to kind of emotionally reconnect with his, through his children, if you like, through the next generation, rather than it being this fiction. You know, he's left at the end of the series of films, books, films, as a kind of, it's almost like an empty figure in a way, isn't it? There is no kind of hero's return. It just kind of drifts gently away. And then the coda at the end is kind of like this, you know, it's like you're not, you know, you're just an ordinary bloke. Then once you've seen your kids off to go to school, you're off to B&Q, aren't you? You know?
He just needs good trauma treatment from the right psychotherapist.
That is excellent. Yes, definitely.
That's what he needs. Laughter. He needs laughter. Have you ever heard of laughter yoga?
I have, and somebody said that they'd love to see me doing it, but I don't think I'm too self-conscious to get into that.
Somebody told me, I mean, you have to realise I had not long been back from the United States, and I'd spent a goodly time in California. And when somebody said the words laughter yoga, I thought, oh God, another mad thing from California. And I don't know what made me do it, but I rang up the woman who runs it, and it wasn't in Guernsey, it was in the UK. And I said, next time I'm over that way, I'll come. I've got to see this. And I turned up in a grey November morning to a dusty, cold church hall somewhere. And I said, look, don't worry about including me. I'd just like to sit on the side and, you know, make some notes and pay attention. And a few people turned up, 15, 20 people turned up. And she said, well, right, should we start then? And everyone, they all stood up. And just thinking about it now makes me laugh. All these people just started laughing. And within 5 seconds, everybody in the room, including me, had just packed up with laughter. And when everybody was just exhausted with laughter, we all stopped and had a break and a cup of tea and a biscuit. And should we go again then? Yeah, and everybody started laughing. It was just the funniest thing. And I came out there, I could have conquered the world. It was just funny. What
Michael Palin says about the fish dance, you know, the Monty Python fish dance. And he said, I deny the people, you know, the most conflicted people who are, you know, at each other's throats. I deny anybody can't just watch that and laugh. So, and there, once you've started to do that, there you've got your resolution. If you can laugh together, you've got your resolution together. I suppose we've got to try and look for those things that give us that moment of kind of mirth, despite all the gloom.
Yes,
we need some mirth.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Mirth,
when I was a
what
kid,
is mirth?
When I was a kid, there was a thing called it was one that do you remember buying records and a 45, and I went out and I bought this thing called the Laughing Policeman, simply because it was a record. It was by a chap, and he was playing a rozza, and he laughed a lot, and it always made me laugh. So go back. Apart from your podcasts, let's stop this seriousness, Rob. What have you been listening to on the music front?
Again, not very much. Kind of not much focus and concentration. So I kind of stopped listening to anything, and I think that's that's something I need to kind of go back to, because I kind of listen to a lot of music, and it's I think it's making the choice and commit myself to something. I did. There was something I mentioned when I was talking to Jay Sykes about listening to like an ambient type thing, Anna Wall, which is like kind of just really, it's like brown sound, that kind of just background sound, very kind of easy to listen to. Anything that comes into the foreground is kind of trying to get my attention, and it's not happening at the moment. So it's like,
Really?
but I think I need to find something. So kind of, I mean, I enjoyed the podcast I did with the other week with my sister, and we listened to Beatles tracks. That was great. That was all right. So something you can listen to while you're washing the windows. That's the kind of stuff.
For me, it's the other way around. I always think music, if you want to evoke emotion in somebody, the easiest way to do that by far is using music. And for me, I'm never much of a fan of background music. If I'm driving along, I'd rather listen to a podcast or something than listen to somebody else's choice of music. But if if I look at my treasured playlist, I've got a sailing playlist. If I go sailing somewhere warm, I've got a playlist that is just my perfect sailing music that does all sorts of wonderful things for me. But I love to just close my eyes and listen to music with a headset on.
I've done that all my life. All the time I listen to music, and so at the moment it's like I'm really enjoying listening to the silence and just sitting in the yard and listening to the birds because you can hear them, that kind of thing. So it's like a break from music. I'll go back to music, probably something like I don't know, a bit Debussy or something like that, just something kind of fairly light. I'm not at this point. I'm not going back into Wagner.
You don't want the emotion that music evokes right now.
Well, maybe. I mean, I enjoyed watching the Bob Fosse documentary drama on the BBC iPlayer. Fosse, and I can't pronounce her name. I forgot what her name is. It's about him and his wife. The choreographer Bob Fosse, and about his life. And so it's got a lot of music, Sweet Charity, and I'm not a fan of Chicago, but that's in there, and Cabaret and things like that in there. So there were some nice tunes in that you could kind of just. You recognise them, and you kind of, you can move up. But at the moment, investing in it is kind of beyond what I'm prepared to do. I think actually it will do me good to spend a couple of weeks maybe just sitting and listening to nothing. And actually, one of the things I'm frustrated about is not getting out at the moment and taking my sound recorder out with me. And maybe what I can do is kind of get out and just go and sit in some fields or car parks or wherever and just record some sounds. I found when I got back from being in Bangkok last year that kind of December in the UK was really grim. And I had jet lag for a couple of weeks, so I wasn't doing a lot of work or anything. And I would take my camera out with me, and I had my audio recorder, which I could connect into my phone, a microphone, which kind of stuck out of my pocket, which looked like a toggle on my pocket. And then I had my headphones in, so I could capture sounds as I was walking around, photograph, and I was once removed from the situation, and and I could get in and take photographs of people in ways that I couldn't have done before. But to have that kind of soundscape that was there, and I must do something with that at some point. So it's kind of collected, but it's kind of a record of that period of time. And when you look back on the photos, you kind of what was going on, and it was kind of like it was pretty grim. And I remember a friend of mine saying, these photos, put them up on Twitter and Instagram, so they're really grim. I said, what's out there? So there's like this cloud coming over, which, oh, hang on a minute, there's a massive pandemic now. Something was coming. You could tell that something was in the air. It's just like it.
Incidentally, I love your Instagram feed since you found the black and white filter.
No, I've my SLR. I just shoot in black. Well, I shoot in RAW, but I turn it into black and white. When I first did photography when I was 18 years old, it was with a Olympus OM1, OM2, OM1, and
I remember those film. Very well.
Yeah, and so I kind of just that's the style I learnt to do, and I like to do it, and kind of going back to it, and I figured out how to use Photoshop so that it doesn't take me 20 minutes to do one picture. It takes me 2 minutes now, so that's improved Brilliant. The capacity very well. So there's kind of creative stuff that I'm doing. So
I was talking to a bunch of photography students, probably a couple of years ago now, one summer, I got invited in to talk about the psychology of photography and the psychology of, how you get portraits and that kind of thing. But I ended up talking for quite some time about what it was like back in the day when you had a 36 roll of film and you took 36 shots and you didn't know what they were going to look like, and you went back to this dark room that smelled of these just amazing chemicals, and you developed the negative, and out the other end a couple of minutes later came what you hoped was a really strong negative. And when you did, you could then use this extraordinary thing called an enlarger and more chemicals and paper and hang them up to dry and come out of the darkness and look at things and think, no, I need to do a little bit more dodging on that bit, and I need to do a little bit more burning in on that bit. And the difference between that and going click and looking at your screen to see what you've taken is just, they're both called photography, but they are just miles apart in psychological terms that I find fascinating. And I dragged the old Nikon FM out a couple of years back, and actually giving that talk prompted me to do it, I think. Dragged the FM out and stuck some Ilford film in it, and then discovered that Ilford have gone bust and you can't actually buy all these chemicals anymore, and to set up a darkroom would just be quite ridiculous. So somebody else had to do me negatives. And the time that it takes
to get, I find it's a lovely romantic, and I 4 or 5 years ago, I did the same. I kind of dug me, I've still got my film camera, bought some film, bought some chemicals, kind of never quite got around to doing it. And it was just, for what I can do in half an hour would have taken me a whole evening. And maybe, when I get to the point where I can retire, then maybe that's what I'll do. I'd love a house with a built-in dark room, and you can just, get away for evenings on end. But it's like kind of, and the craft that goes into it. But in this day and age, I don't think. And plus, there's I like the kind of immediacy as well. One of the things I've been able to do is just walk around, and then literally within half an hour you get back and you can share them. They're up, and they're of reasonable quality in terms of the presentation. But I don't think they've got no more life beyond that, as far as I'm concerned. It's just like post and forget. It's disposable.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Yeah. I know. I mean, I've got this wall here. You're just up there, covered with my own photos and prints. But the only reason it means something to me, of course, is memorable moments. It's like going back to the music, isn't it? If you want to evoke emotion in me, you play music from moments that, for me, were just really important, developmental, pivotal moments in my own life.
Well, one of the best projects I've seen online is the mass isolation hashtag on Instagram and Twitter, and that where people are sharing photos. It was taking the mass observation movement in the kind of post-war Second World War period, and using that as an updated version for the lockdown. And there's some fantastic images on that, because they're I don't know, they're not projecting personalities. They're not projecting. It's not fashion photos. It's often about absence of people, and that for me is they're much. That's something. There'll be an exhibition, I think, at the Derby Quad. They're involved in this, in the Format Festival. I'm sure there'll be exhibitions about this in the future, probably at the Photographers Gallery in London, something like that. So if there's anything comes out of this in terms of curated work, just ordinary people showing what and it's that kind of instinctual insight that people have. So it's really cool. So it's
mass observation,
mass isolation.
Oh, mass isolation.
Yeah, well worth following. So is there anything you want to mention that you're doing in the next couple of days or weeks or anything? Or
do I want to what? Sorry.
Mention anything that you're doing or up to in the next couple of days or weeks? Have you got anything planned that is of interest?
Now our mutual acquaintance, lovely Amber Rondo, made a documentary. Which and tomorrow I'm going to talk to another mutual acquaintance, John Costa, about documentary about my experiences in 9/11 in New York, or 11/9 as I like to call it, just to annoy Americans.
And what time are you on that? Because I'm on that as well, so in the afternoon.
11, I
Okay.
think it is.
Yeah, I think I'm in 2, something like that.
Okay.
I'll have to double check. So I'll listen out for it.
So, well, I think Amber's just going to talk about, her documentary. And it's actually a very short documentary, not that she wanted to be, but it was made under the restrictions of doing her media production degree, and it couldn't be longer than however many minutes it was, which cuts out the most important bit from my personal point of view. My 9/11 experiences I could witter on for ages about, but there's a really, really important thing for anybody that is ever visiting the United States and they get caught up in any kind of disaster or anything like that. You'll be given an 0800 number, which is for FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and they will say to you, yeah, no, don't worry, just get the hotel receipts, just do this, just spend that. When all this disaster is over, FEMA will give you a different number, we'll pick up the bill for you. Great. They will only do that if you are a US citizen, but nobody tells you that until the moment you go to claim your, in my case, $15,862 on hotels and all sorts of other money. So to this day, I'm still out of pocket over $15,000. The best part of $16,000 on hotels and other bits and pieces. I mean, it's just the most ridiculous situation. Yep, all these people come and hand you out bits of paper and say, here's your 0800 number, and you dial every day, and they say, no, just keep spending money. We'll reimburse you. We're the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Nobody ever tells you they will only do that if you are a US citizen. So what's the next thing I'm doing? Apart from that, I'm having half a day off tomorrow, which is a Sunday. And then I've got another week of clients. I've got another week of, trying to push this app. And that whole thing, I shall keep an eye out as to how soon I can go back to Guernsey and get on a plane as soon as I can. I've got 2 sons over there that I miss very much, and what has become my island home.
Well, good luck. Keep safe. It's been great chatting.
Rob, thank you. It's really lovely to chat with you, and we've covered all sorts of interesting things. I hope you keep safe. I'm glad you are coming out of this virus story now. It must have been quite alarming for you, but I'm glad you're getting there.
Yeah, much stronger. So this has been a distraction therapy podcast with me, Rob Watson. If you want to get in contact, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at RobWMedia, and the website is robwatsonmedia.net. There is a Patreon page, which is just search for Rob Watson Media, if you want to leave a little donation for a cup of tea or something like that, although I don't expect very much out of this one, but until next time, thank you very much.
This is Distraction Therapy, a podcast to explain how we get through the day. Keep calm and carry on.